Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Monday night, March 16, 2026, as we record this new show. We continue our 2026 position preview episodes by taking a look at the Chicago White Sox starting pitching. Looking at our projected five-man rotation for the Chicago White Sox, these five pitchers, what their PECOTA projections look like, what does a successful season look like for them, play yay or nay, and also over-under for a key metric for their upcoming season. Joining me is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and Sox Machine's managing editor Jim Margulis. Jim, it was good hanging out with you in Nashville this weekend. My stay in Nashville lasted a little longer than expected. For all those that have been trying to travel this past weekend, weather across the country wasn't all that great, but it was nice to see you in Nashville. We do have some news on the White Sox front, and it's unfortunate. Mike Vasil, who was key of the White Sox bullpen in 2025, played in a lot of roles. He pitched over 100 innings for the White Sox last year. He walked off with the trainer against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he's having right elbow discomfort. And James, at this moment, have we heard anything else from the Chicago White Sox, and what is going on with Mike Vasil?
Nothing definitive as far as timeline or even kind of a more robust statement beyond what they said initially he went out for. Sometimes it takes a while to kind of hash out both what scans can mean or what their course of action toward it are going to be, and that can account for the delay. I can't assume it's good. I would be irresponsible to assume it's bad, so at this point it's just in limbo. But anybody kind of leaving a game and thus expecting at least a week of like not throwing in response, you can kind of do the math and assume like, all right, that's doesn't seem ideal for him to start on the opening day roster. So they haven't said he's not going to be, but I think kind of simple logic of following like how teams are when there's a flare up like this, you can probably take him out of your projections for your opening day roster if you want to win your opening day roster pool with, I don't know, your dog or whoever else is actually playing with you in that.
Well, we do have our 32-team Sox Machine Fantasy Baseball League coming up. The draft is this week.
Is there an opening day roster pool?
Not an opening day roster pool, but when you have that many teams and you're drafting that many pitchers, Mike Vasil was pretty valuable because coming out of the bullpen, used a lot, 100 innings. He was helpful for, I forget which team had him, but I know that he would have been drafted by somebody because pretty much every player gets drafted in that 32-team league. Elijah Evans on Twitter, reporting from Just Baseball, Jim, he tweeted out that Chris Murphy will be making the Chicago White Sox roster. If official news does come down the pipe that Mike Vasil is going to miss opening day because he has to be put onto the injured list, this seems like that type of move, right? That Murphy would fill in for Mike Vasil or somebody else in the bullpen losing their job.
It seems like a pretty direct replacement in terms of somebody willing to do anything at any point in the game. Like that's how he's marketed himself, as somebody who will open, will close, do anything in between, will start, will work on short rest, will pitch longer than you think if he has to. And that was Vasil's job last year. The only difference really is that Murphy's left-handed, Vasil's right-handed, but based on the leverage they're probably expected to face over the course of like early usage, I imagine it's gonna be on the lower side or either opening or maybe pitching in for like a high pitch count early in the season and covering like the 4th, 5th, and 6th. I think that probably where his territory is. And so that's where handedness, I don't think, matters too much.
And Sean Newcomb, I believe Will Venable has already said that he will be pitching out of the bullpen for the White Sox.
That is correct.
So we know 2 guys that are making the bullpen outside, of course, Grant Taylor, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Jordan Hicks, Jordan Leisure.
You know who won, who's not?
Who isn't making the bullpen, James?
Well, a source indicated that Rule 5 pick Alexander Alberto has been placed on waivers, which is a measure that teams have to take when they are basically deciding their Rule 5 pick is not going to make the opening day roster. He clears waivers. Could not. That's how the White Sox got Mike Vasil. The Rays put him on waivers. They snatched him up and then abided by the Rule 5 rules. That could happen. But if he clears, they would thus have to offer him back to the Rays, who have the choice. Man, this is all right. I can feel listeners dropping out, but they could either pay back $50,000 of the $100,000 they received when the White Sox picked Alberto, or they could keep all and get Alberto back, or they could keep all the money and say, keep it. You broke it. You bought it. Or they can still work out a separate deal outside of that. But he was kind of the heat check of the Rule 5 draft. Big stuff guy who hadn't pitched above high A and, had control issues. He's been a little wild or been a little erratic in terms of execution. He has a 10.80 ERA in spring. It kind of seems like, them saying, all right, we're a week from opening day. We know we're not doing this, and kind of getting it set.
And if the Rays don't want him, then the White Sox can send him to what? Winston-Salem? Repeat high A again?
I would think Double A. I also kind of think there's certainly people in the Rays who think he had stuff. They just thought it was kind of, a leap, given that he had not pitched above IA. It had been this long, development path to throw enough strikes to really advance, even working in relief. So I think it was a risk they took, and now it looks like they're, borderline mostly right about it.
So we're getting closer to finalizing as far as the White Sox roster. Jim made his predictions on SoxMachine.com, so if you didn't get a chance to check out that post, you can do so on the website, and we'll see on how close Jim is with his projections and predictions, I guess, for the opening day 26-man roster. But we also got insight. Braden Montgomery is heading to Birmingham. Shocker. Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz are going to Charlotte. Billy Carlson, Jane Foskey, they're going to Kannapolis. So no big surprises right now with the minor league assignments, but we are getting closer to opening day, and we're getting more insight on where some of the key White Sox prospects will be playing, in addition to who will be making the team. I believe there's 42 players left in camp right now, Jim, after the latest cuts?
I believe that's it.
Yeah, so 16 more players have to be cut by the Chicago White Sox between now and opening day. So there'll be more roster news coming down the pipe from the White Sox, and hopefully we do get more clarity on Mike Vasil's injury. Now, with us previewing the starting pitchers, one thing that I'm going to try to incorporate more into the podcast over the season, because I keep hearing this metric being used in other podcasts, especially national podcasts talking about the game from a very macro view, is strikeout rate minus walk rate. Why is this metric important? The thought is this particular metric, which is that simple. You take a pitcher's strikeout rate minus the walk rate, you get this percentage. And the idea is that pitchers get outs without needing the defense thanks to strikeouts. And pitchers can avoid giving up free base runners without the defense by limiting their walks. And I think what helps, and why some people are using and leaning on this metric more than, let's say, ERA, earned run average, is that last year your top 3 pitchers that qualified for the ERA title in strikeout minus walk rate in 2025, Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Paul Skeens. Okay, that scans. Those 3 are probably the best starting pitchers right now, with no argument, in Major League Baseball. The White Sox top 3 in this metric: Jordan Leisure, Brandon Eisert, and old friend now, Yoendris Gomez. Shane Smith was 4th. in this particular metric. But there's a part of me, Jim, that I understand that for those that love pitching and breaking down pitching, especially looking at league-wide lens, that earned run average is like batting average for pitchers. Like, it's too dependent on defenses, doesn't really convey just how good a particular pitcher is. But I've been citing ERA forever. It's one of the back of the baseball card stats we've been using. Also, we still continue mentioning batting average on this podcast. Should we start ignoring ERA? Should we start using other advanced metrics when we are talking about White Sox pitching in 2026?
I think there are two audiences you're talking about. I think when it comes to ERA, and you'll see people making this argument. I think Tom Tango, the MLB senior data architect, like, he's the most vocal about it, saying we need to shift the Overton window for baseball fans. We offer no quarter to traditional stats anymore. You must be talking about slugging, if nothing else, or like OBP. Like, you never mention batting average, never mention ERA, and God forbid we even discuss the pitcher win and loss anymore. And like, I get it, and I think for like people who look at it from a fantasy baseball standpoint, from a pitcher value standpoint, from like an acquisition standpoint, since I think a lot of the conversation is like player value and what do front offices value, like, it makes sense to use those metrics, ERA estimators versus ERA. But I think like when it comes to fans, it's just like they kind of want to know what happened when those players are on the field, and like what kind of excitement it generated or how much it bummed them out. And I think sometimes those stats can tell the story, but I think sometimes they don't. Or sometimes, like, you get a cool pitching run where somebody is not striking guys out and walking too many guys, but is posting like a 2 ERA over 2 months. Like, I think ERA tells a story of just like, people are having a lot of fun while he's on the mound. Why is it happening? Or and how long can that be expected to continue? And the games that are banked while people are outperforming expectations or beating their peripherals, like, those games count. So I think to an extent, like, you can't shake like ERA, especially as like a easy reference point. I do think you have to like look into ERA, especially like if it involves a ton of unearned runs, where a pitcher just can't close the door and is like, oh, it's clearly a mirage because he's allowed 25 unearned runs this year, and just he's part of the reason why. Like, especially like when a pitcher is a terrible defensive pitcher and contributes a lot of errors that extend innings, and then all of a sudden those runs are unearned. Like, that's come up a few times. But like, those feel like they should be earned. But I think it's two different audiences, and like, typically speaking, like when it comes to like KBB, like, I tend to like look at it for reliever acquisitions. I tend to look, do a sorts by it to see like, what do the White Sox need? Sir Anthony Dominguez, like, how does he help this? Like that's to understand like how a pitcher might be good for next season. I look at those stats first versus ERA, especially for relievers doing it in a small sample. But I think we're talking about games being played as they're unfolding. Like, the runs do determine how much fans are enjoying a season, both scored, driven in, and prevented, whether it's defense doing it or pitchers doing it. So I think that's not something you can entirely shake unless you're comfortable being written off by a sizable portion of the audience, which I think is a White Sox news outlet and analysis outlet that is trying to build an audience and can't really afford to alienate anybody who finds us and hangs with us. We can't really afford to shun them at this point.
Yeah, I'm always willing to pop in and be a cranky contrarian for no reason. So yes, like K minus BB is, generally going to lead you to the best pitcher more reliably than ERA swings. The fourth best K minus BB percentage last year belongs to Joe Ryan, who is not no damn fourth best pitcher in baseball for specific reasons that K minus they got to figure out the name for that first thing. Something rolls off the tongue better. But someone who's 1.4 home runs per 9 for his entire career, like, all stats kind of tell a story that you have to contextualize, and this would be no different. So I think pushing progressively towards better ones is good, but treating like old ones like they're exceptionally fraudulent or misleading, and like that the new ones won't have their own kind of cracks and holes that we'll expose on our own and demand that the next thing that comes after it is so much clearly better that this one should be rebuked in all forms. Yeah, I think we can be more open-ended about it and not treat like everyone using inefficient data as some sort of like something requiring an inquisition of sorts would be fine for the discourse.
Do you know which metrics are important to the White Sox, James? Like when you are talking to
Innings.
Yeah.
I think of like the most old school thing I could say that wasn't actually wrong.
Well, Christian Opera mentioned stuff, and
yeah, they have their own and like proprietary stuff plus metric, and
okay, but that's not like that's different than the one we see on Fangraphs, right?
Yeah, the White Sox stuff plus that they use internally would not be on Fangraphs unless I just achieved an absolute coup of some kind. But I'll let you know if something like that happens.
Okay. I'll be mentioning over the course of the season strikeout minus walk rate and see how White Sox pitchers are doing.
I mean, to a pivot, I guess, or tangential is that like the big like placard that's in the White Sox spring training complex. That's like what the hitting goals are for the entire organization. Makes like extensive reference to OPS, which is just basically a metric that the players are all conversant on. Like that's the level of like analytical revolution where any player, both like a guy like Andrew Benintendi and like a rookie will both like be conversant in OPS. So like even the teams themselves do some like, hey, this isn't perfect, but let's just give you a number that you know what it means roughly, and you'll get the idea from it. Like they modulate their communication in the same way. So I don't think like publicly we need to be like even harsher where anyone with, ERA gets acid spritzed on them between innings or whatever they have planned. I don't know.
And for the record, like I would like to talk about batting average less, but in the case of the White Sox, when they don't draw walks, they need to hit to get on base. So like batting average is the first place I look for so many White Sox hitters over the years and understand like if they're actually helping create runs.
Like if Chase Mydrop bats 250 this year, he's not having a good season. Like we know that. Like it's descriptive of the type of player, whereas like Braden Montgomery could have hit 250 and have an awesome season, and it's descriptive even if it isn't like entirely like wrapping up the entire worth as a person into one metric.
We'll be referencing the metric over the course of the season when analyzing White Sox pitchers, but we're not dumping earned run average. We'll still use FIP as well, especially if walks are burning White Sox pitchers this upcoming season, especially in the variety of they only gave up one hit in the inning, but it was a 2-run homer. We want to identify those as areas of opportunities and talk about as far as White Sox pitchers avoiding the free passes. But that's something that did catch my attention, and I'm glad you mentioned Top Tango as well, Jim, on trying to get rid of ERA. That seems to be a campaign. We will not be participating in that campaign on the Sox Machine podcast. So let's go ahead and preview and project what we think will be the 5-man starting rotation for the Chicago White Sox. If you listened to our previous episode, we hinted at what the 5-man rotation could possibly be. This is what we're going with right now on March 16th, 10 days away from opening day in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Shane Smith, Davis Martin, Anthony Kay, Erick Fedde, Sean Burke. Those are the 5. Are they in that order? Probably not. As James mentioned, that I think it's Smith, Kay, Martin right now is how they're lined up in spring training, working out.
That's how it was set up. If they wrinkle with it in some way, I don't know. Like Shane Smith started a minor league game 5 innings on Sunday. Then Sean Burke started Monday night. Not seeing their pitching schedules, I don't know if they've started messing with things in some way. I don't know, but Venable didn't put anything in stone other than Smith at this point, so who knows?
Yes. So the order could change, but we're going with that 5 as far as our projected starting rotation for the Chicago White Sox, at least to start this season. We'll get more into that later into this podcast. But first, let's go with the opening day starter for the Chicago White Sox, Shane Smith. And Shane Smith, the all-star representative for the 2025 White Sox, Pagoda is projecting in 29 games started for Smith to pitch 137 innings with 138 strikeouts and an ERA of 4.14. James Fegan, what does a successful season look like for Shane Smith in 2026?
I still haven't lost my mental block into assuming that you want a single number spat out. So I'm going to say 180 innings, because if he's doing that, he's healthy. Presumably his velocity is holding in a way that's not making them panic limit his innings or skip starts. And he's getting through outings, effectively enough to stay in there. He's not necessarily like, his stuff looks awesome. Like you see him like sit, upper 90s and throws like this changeup that feels like it's, moving very like sharply while still like clipping 92. And, some of his better sliders have looked like bat missers, but like his miss numbers haven't, at least in the majors, they weren't amazing. His strikeout numbers weren't amazing. The best version of him seems like he's just throwing a lot of fastballs in the zone, which sometimes can lead to starts where you strike out a lot of guys. Sometimes leads to maybe quicker at bats. And I think it'll vary. It's hard to bank on him being like, he's going to strike out 25% of guys or more. I just think if he's logging innings, he's more or less doing what you want, whether it becomes like a low contact guy who even uses his sinker more and gets grounders, or it becomes like leveling up and he's repeats the All-Star game appearance, or whatever your, rosiest vision for Shane Smith is.
Well, that's a good way to move over to our yay or nay. Jim Margulis, Shane Smith represents the White Sox again in the 2026 All-Star game. Yay or nay?
I'm going to say nay, just because he had to be the White Sox All-Star last year. Like, they didn't have any relievers. They didn't have like any small sample size champions that you could squint at and say like, he's recorded 20 saves in the first half. Let's put him on and he'll probably never pitch. Like in this case, it was like, it's either him or Adrian Hauser, and Hauser was on the team for like 2 months at that point, less than 2 months at that point. So it had to be him. I imagine with this roster, there's probably somebody making a better case in some form or at some position of need to where like a starter isn't the guy who ends up getting that nod this time around.
I do like James' perspective, though, because if Shane Smith can pitch 180 innings, and if he does start strong in the first half, Jim, like, I know to your point, somebody has to go for the White Sox to the All-Star game. If he pitches like the way that he did in August and September, he could once again make the best case out of all the pitchers and all the players for the Chicago White Sox to get that honor again of going to the All-Star game. But there are stronger candidates, though. Colson Montgomery, even though shortstop's a deep position in the American League, even Munetaka Murakami, if you wanted him to be part of the All-Star game, or maybe Japan helps him out with the voting and Murakami is an All-Star starter if he hits well. I'm probably with you, Jim. I probably lean towards nay, but like, I still give Shane Smith like a 45% chance of making the All-Star game for the White Sox.
That feels high.
Okay.
I mean, put like 15%, 20, just because it's probably, especially when they sort by K- BB rates, and he's ranked 80th, and then doesn't get the nod. But I guess if James is using the single number, I continue with my holistic approach as the counterpoint to like what makes a successful season. And I would say like that you can ask him if he's the ace of the staff and he doesn't want to spit on you next Sox Fest, I think is the answer. Like he feels more comfortable with that title.
Nah, I don't get that impression at all. I do not. He will still decline. He'll still decline. So for Shane Smith, over under time. And I'm setting the over under at 150 and a half innings pitched by Shane Smith in 2026. So James, if you say that what would make a successful season for Shane Smith is to get to 180 innings because of longevity and being able to get the ball every fifth day, are you taking the over or under 150 and a half innings for Smith?
I do under. I'm basically predicting him to get hurt, which feels wrong. I'll go over because based on nothing, or not something that has ever prevented anyone from getting injured before, like how Shane Smith's a big guy. He seems built up for the long haul. He doesn't look like someone who's there's not much projectability left, to put it like that. His body seems geared up to eat a lot of innings, so I'd go over. He doesn't have recent injury concerns, despite being someone who obviously went undrafted basically because he didn't stay healthy in college. He's been pretty stable in a White Sox uniform, both in terms of velo and avoiding any actual flare-ups other than the, rolling his ankle at a very convenient time to give him a rest after the All-Star break.
Well, I mean, he could have moments of being ineffective. I mean, 150 innings and 30 starts. I mean, that's 5 innings on average. So it's possible for him to still make 30 starts and come at the under.
What happened to the game I love?
No.
Dylan Cease did that. We were all kind of scandalized by it. Now it's the gold standard.
Yeah.
I think with the way Smith pitches, like he should be efficient enough to where, like, if he's making 30 starts, something has to be going right. And if he's not logging that many innings, like he's probably not making 30 starts. Like it's probably more of like a 50 games type thing with half of them starts, or like, a mix where he jumps into the swingman pool. But yeah, I would say over as well, just because like there's nothing. Yeah, you're basically predicting misfortune versus. I think there's another talking point later, another over/under later that kind of gets to a different way of hitting the under that is not just doom and gloom, but is more like a more realistic discussion of what trajectories look like. So in this case, like the arrow seems to be pointing up enough, and he has enough ways of getting guys out. I think he showed an ability to evolve and tweak his arsenal based on what hitters are doing to him, to where I feel like 180 I think is aspirational, just because that requires kind of everything to go right. But I think 150 builds in a lull here or there, or like a tweaked hamstring that costs him 2 weeks or something like that Lucas Giolito would occasionally get, and still be able to hit that mark.
All right, so I will also take the over. I'm feeling pretty confident about Shane Smith coming into the 2026 season. Let us know either on the podcast page on SoxMachine.com or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine if you are taking the over or under 150.5 innings for Shane Smith in 2026. The next White Sox pitcher that we project will be part of the starting rotation and we're previewing now is the Dart, Davis Martin. Whether or not he likes that nickname, I'm still sticking with it. Davis's PECOTA projections: 29 games started, 160 1/3 innings, with 124 strikeouts and a 4.48 earned run average for Davis Martin in 2026. Jim Margulis, what does a successful season look like for Davis Martin in 2026?
This is one where I'm tempted to steal James's bit and boil it down to a number, just because he's somebody who is a little bit of a shapeshifter in terms of like how he gets guys out, or what's his leading pitch, or how much is it smoke and mirrors versus how much is somebody who just has a broad arsenal and can sequence and be a crafty righty type, which do exist even if they're being phased out a little bit. But I would think, like, based on his profile, and it doesn't seem like he's going to be somebody who starts like striking out a ton of guys all of a sudden. Like, I do think it boils down to innings, and he has to be somebody who's like, why is he still in a rotation? Because we had this conversation in the Sox Machine comments in terms of like, why do people consider him a lock if his peripherals look so sketchy and like the strikeout rate is what it is? Like, do you feel confident that this can continue, or will it go off the rails and you're just looking at like, yeah, he'll never get back? Because like, how could you expect to succeed when you're striking out that few guys? I think you're kind of looking at somebody who has to qualify for the ERA title to establish his worth. Like, you want to look at it at the end of the season, I think, and barring some kind of leap to where all of a sudden he's missing a ton more bats or getting a ton more grounders. You look at him in terms of like, why is he on the team? Because he throws innings. You don't exactly know how he's going to do it, but he does it. And at this point, you can't disregard anybody who is able to, throw 142 innings last year and then build upon it and progress and continue to be like a FIP defying or ERA estimator defying pitcher. Like, I would hope that the strikeout rate rises a little bit to provide him a little bit more stability, but I do think he's somebody who's just going to have to always get the job done to a certain degree. Like, I imagine on a healthy staff, it looks like a number 4 starter versus a number 2 starter. Yeah, innings would be the mark for me.
All right, so on that topic of innings, going over to yay or nay, James Fegan. Davis Martin meets or exceeds his Pagoda innings projections of 160 innings pitched in 2026. Yay or nay?
What's his career high?
137. Last year was a career high because he was finally healthy.
They threw 142 last year.
The IL did, though. So because of that, I would probably put him in that, like, I'm not bullish enough to, like, get over 160 to say, like, over. I feel like 150, 160 could easily be where he falls in, like, a still season where he's pretty useful to the group. Just because, like, you got pretty significant pitching inventory ideally making its way into the rotation. I would know, like, if that pushes them out or do they need less length because they have, like, some more guys up by the end of the year. But I wouldn't say, like, oh, it's such a given he's going to make 33 starts and going to get, like, this long leash on all of them. And there's just, like, it's going to go through the end of the season because there's no help coming. But, like, theoretically you have, I mean, ideally Smith, Schultz, McDougal, what's his face, Sandlin, making their debuts and competing for starts this year. Not to mention, like, Jonathan Cannon or Duncan Davitt and all these guys who are kind of Kai Bush, Mason Adams, all coming back, Drew Thorpe. There's just so much inventory in there just to be like, oh yeah, for sure, over 160 innings for Davis Martin. That feels like viewing him as capabilities in the vacuum more than, like, seeing what the rest of the team is. And I wouldn't say, like, he's got that level of, like, head start over the pecking order of, like, the rest of the pitching group.
I agree with James, Jim. I just don't see. I mean, it'd be great because if Davis Martin does get to 160 innings, not only is he healthy, but he's being very effective and probably pitching in a way that Will Venable and Chris Getz believe that this helps the team win ball games. So by all means, go for 200 innings this year, Davis Martin. But just his past injury history, Jim, and as far as his ability to strike out batters, and he's really reliant on White Sox defense, which is a really tricky game, and understanding that there are probably higher ceiling pitchers behind Davis, as James just pointed out. That's why I am a nay that he's not going to meet or exceed 160 innings.
Yeah, I think it's also, with the inventory they have, it makes it a lot easier to put a guy on the injured list if there is something bothering him versus being like, let's push him back a day, but we really can't afford to have him miss 2 weeks, be out of the rotation for that long. Like, yeah, ideally by June, July, you're talking about, like, having 2 or 3 guys who could easily step into a spot start situation, be like, yeah, let's see what this audition looks like.
Yeah, like, just even last season when he went down, it was like discussion of, oh, he really didn't want to, but we felt like with this certain thing with schedule or, like, availability we're able to, like, maybe get through this, like, you know, the 15 days to, or, you know, 2 weeks or roughly that 2-3 weeks that he needed it. Whereas if you have 3 top 100 prospects in the Charlotte rotation, like, that's a different calculation maybe on, like, someone who's, like, on borderline for, you know, whether they just are actually hurt or just, like, seemal fatigue, maybe their stuff is a little down and we're giving them a day, or we're skipping them a turn in rotation, or we're working them in bulk in the bullpen. I just think, like, it's just a little bit less of, like, man, we've absolutely got to wring every little inch out of Davis Martin to get through this year that it's been, you know, maybe the last 8 months of White Sox season on the calendar, you know, end of 2024 and all of 2025.
So I think I know the answer to this next question, but let's play over under for Davis Martin. Davis in his career is averaging 0.777 strikeouts per inning. So you take that strikeout per inning career average, multiply it by 160 innings, you get 124 strikeouts. So I'm putting the over under 124 and a half strikeouts for Davis Martin in 2026. Jim Margulis, are you taking the over or the under?
Taking the under, but I hope it's the good kind of under where you have the conversation like, how does he do this? He can't keep getting away with it. And, having that kind of fun, well, that's baseball versus being somebody's like, he doesn't miss bats. The infielders are ducking and covering. This is not going well.
All right, so Jim's taking the under. James, how about you? Are you taking the over or under on strikeouts?
I guess under. I don't know what factors are going on league wide as far as like contact rate at this moment. But relative to what we said, that seems about in line with his rates, that if he's going like 150 innings, he could be like 120 and, still have a good season and be under the specific mark.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well. I'm also taking the under. Again, let us know on the Sox Machine podcast page on the website or in the YouTube comments. Are you taking the over or under on Davis Martin's strikeouts in 2026? Now, the next three pitchers we'll see just as far as longevity for this upcoming season. I feel like they could be at risk at pretty much after June 1st of being replaced by Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, or even a Tanner McDougal, or other White Sox pitchers that are getting healthy, maybe showing promise down to the minor leagues. But the first is the free agent signing from Japan, and that is left-hander Anthony Kay. And Kay's PECOTA projections have him making 26 starts this upcoming season, 142 and a third innings pitched, with 136 strikeouts and a 4.55 earned run average. James Fegan, what does a successful season look like for Anthony Kay?
Stays in the rotation the whole time. He came here to be a starter. That's kind of why to leave. That's what he couldn't get before he went to MPB and showed he could have success there. And that's what kind of was the clinching both for not staying in MPB when he had offers to do so and picking the White Sox. This is a clear path to rotation slot, and they've kind of haven't really messed around with the idea that he'd be anything other than a starter from the get-go. So with, as we mentioned, kind of the pitching inventory that they have coming in, if he's able to hold tight to a spot the whole time, and whether it's close or whether he just kind of clearly performs and agree that you're not going to mess with him and he's able to kind of live out his contract that way, where it's either, hey, we know one of our rotation slots in the next year is Anthony Kay, or hey, we have a viable starter to kind of shop, and Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith and Tanner McDougal all look like aces immediately, and it's going to be a new reign of supremacy, and this is just to like get a reliever for their World Series run in 2027. That would all be good if Anthony Kay just looks like someone who should get a locked-in rotation spot for next year the way he is this year. So I've avoided giving him a statistical benchmark, if only because there was some way to be even vaguer in my vision for success than before.
So let's move over to yay or nay for Anthony Kay, Jim Margulis. Yay or nay, Kay follows Erick Fedde's footsteps and performs better than expected with the Chicago White Sox in 2026.
I'm going to say nay in the sense that like Fedde could have been an all-star for the White Sox if they were a more compelling team to deserve more than one, and wasn't selected, but had an all-star type first half. The trade return for him felt light, even if his subsequent performance kind of showed why maybe teams weren't all that enamored with him. I don't know if Kay has it in him. I guess my concern with him is that like how much of this velocity he's showing early can hold up over the course of a season. If he does lose a little bit of velocity to where he's throwing like 92, 93 versus like 94, 96, what fastball is working for him? Like, is the case where he throws two fastballs because like in like along the lines of Shane Smith, it's two different shapes and hitters, it confuses hitters, or does he throw two fastballs because he's not sure which one's working? Like, kind of like Jonathan Cannon, just like throwing so many pitches because like it's more like throwing stuff against the wall versus having a very concentrated form of attack that just all involves velocity every single time. That's, I think, my concern with Kay. So I would say like I kind of vision him coming out of the gate hot maybe and looking good, but then as the weather starts to heat up and maybe stuff flattens out a little bit, then becomes a little bit more susceptible to uglier lines, and more or less is somebody who crosses a day off the calendar and can be replaced over the course of a season. But given that this is all speculative, and the entire kind of coming back from overseas, throwing harder than he did before, maybe can last the whole time, like the way Shane Smith more or less lasted the whole time. I'm not counting on I'm not like predicting and saying like, the White Sox are going to have to replace him. It's just more what I'm guarding against, and open to being, open to him changing my mind, just because like that never arrives.
I mean, if he wants to pitch at a level where he gets serious consideration to be part of the All-Star team, go for it, Anthony. I mean, that'd be a great signing, free agent signing for the Chicago White Sox from this past offseason. Well, the next pitcher that we are previewing for the Chicago White Sox is Erick Fedde. Old friend, now current friend. Dakota is projecting 13 games started for Erick Fedde, with 96 innings pitched, 70 strikeouts at a 4.69 earned run average. Jim Margulis, what does a successful season look like for Erick Fedde?
Probably getting traded again, in terms of him being on a one-year deal. So many starters for the White Sox having their eyes on a lengthy audition over the course of the second half of the season. Him being somebody who probably needs to contribute now, 33 years old. So like he's a case where teams are acquiring him because of the way he's pitching now versus how he's going to project a year or two from now. Like, I think, it's a case where, I think ideally he'd be pitching well enough and everybody in the White Sox would be faring well enough to where like, we're not messing with a good thing. But I think in his case, it would be something where he's faring well, and the White Sox just have so many guys who need starts that he's the one who finds a taker somewhere else when an emergency arises, and they try it all over again. So that's my holistic answer to what a successful White Sox portion of the season for Erick Fedde looks like.
But Erick, I think, wants to stay, though, James. He's one of the few guys that wants to play for the Chicago White Sox because things went so well for him, and he's trying to return to his 2024 form. And that leads me to the yay or nay, James Fegan. Erick Fedde in 2026 returns to his 2024 form.
Like in full?
Yes, in full. He's back.
Probably not. Like, that seems extreme. That was like the best season of his career, effectively. I mean, outside of the KBO dominance, I'm going to say nay. That seems like I think the rosy outcome you could give me would be somewhere between under 5 ERA or, or 2024. Some midpoint of that feels like that'd be solid. That'd be what you hope for. I think just full reversion, given that there was clearly a level of mechanical slippage that they're fighting against or trying to undo. He's thrown a fair amount of innings since those days. He's over 30. That seems like asking too much or trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice.
Well, I guess, so going back to what constitutes a successful season for Erick Fedde, I do like your point, Jim, about if Fedde can get himself traded. I think that's a good point because with the young pitchers the White Sox have, if Fedde can make it to July 1st with the Chicago White Sox and not be non-tendered, I mean, is that the type of bar that we're talking about? Because he signed for such little money, and he's coming off what hasn't been fun seasons in post-All-Star break 2024 and then all of 2025. Would that also be a good barometer of success, Jim, if Fedde can still be with the White Sox on July 1st?
Yeah, I think you hope that he's still on the White Sox on July 1st because like he's earning his keep versus there's nobody better to take those spots. Like, I think there are other ways this rotation can give, whether it's just kind of routine injuries, not necessarily like back breaking injuries or elbow breaking injuries like we saw last year, but just hamstring here and ankle there, comeback or something like that knocks him out for 2 weeks. And like, he's just has to be in the rotation to get by versus like, oh, there's no reason to mess with them right now. Like, I think when it comes to pitchers, you don't get rid of a guy before you have to. Like, even thinking like worst case scenarios. Like, I remember when they released Derek Holland, was it 2015 back in September? And then like, all of a sudden they needed somebody like Derek Holland because I think 2 other guys got hurt. So I think there's always something, to where, although they have this impressive mound of pitching kind of forming in Charlotte, like weird ways typically open up to afford those guys opportunities. And so, it would be a hope that Fedde won't be shoved out unnecessarily.
And that leads to our last starter that we are projecting in the rotation, and that is last year's opening day starter, and that is Sean Burke. And Pagoda is projecting 29 games started for Sean Burke in 2026 with 145 and 2/3 innings and 144 strikeouts. And James, with Sean, there's times that we watched him last year and it felt like there's some promise here. And then there are other times you'd be like, I don't know if he's a starter. He might be better suited as a reliever. So what does a successful season look like for Sean Burke in 2026?
I mean, the cheap answer would be like stays in the rotation the whole time, like holds off comers, right? And that would be a little bit like saying it would be nice if the sun would, rise tomorrow. Like a little obvious, but for him, it's specifically like missing bats, and that's where things kind of retreated for him last year. And obviously, we've talked through a little bit of like he felt like developing a sinker hampered the action on a slider last year in a way that he's hoping to undo. Another thing he kind of said in spring was, we saw him throw with a bit more velocity tonight and it hit 98. Like he hit 97, one of his first Cactus League starts, probably the first one, and I was talking like, do you feel pretty good about where the velo is at, coming out of the gate to see that? And he was like, I knew it would take some time. He wasn't satisfied with it. It was more like, this is okay if this is the starting point. He's saying like, I need to sit 97. I don't want to like just be touching it, which, all right, that'd be awesome. Let's see it, big guy. But I think it's part of him, like larger feeling of, despite us kind of watching Sean Burke and probably thinking, good stuff, just needs to be a little bit more pinpoint. I think maybe he is what he is as far as like, pound the zone rather than more, command, like control over command type of guy, just fill the zone with your stuff. He feels like his stuff wasn't at the level he wanted to be last year, whether it was both velo or it's kind of slider movement. So he's big on like, he wants to be throwing hard. He wants his slider to be snapping. He wants his sliders to be really hard. He wants to be very high 80s or cracking 90s with some of them. So for him, it's like seeing the stuff tick up to what I think we've definitely seen in flashes, but maybe not, over 150 innings or anything like that. And as a result, thinks he needs to be a guy who strikes out 25 to 30% of hitters to kind of go around. Being a four-seam guy, he's not really going to get balls on the ground. He's not going to control for contact, and he hasn't been like a sub, 5% walk rate guy at any point of his career. I think you expect a standard rate of free passes as well. The stuff needs to play. He needs to miss enough bats to get around all that.
All right, so let's move over to yay or nay for Sean Burke. And Jim Margulis, I ask you, with his big stuff and strikeout ability, Sean Burke leads the Chicago White Sox in strikeouts in 2026. Yay or nay?
Gonna say nay. I want to say yay. Like you can see this happening in a way that in a significant amount of projections, you could see a season where he does throw 160 innings. And if he's throwing 160 innings or more, then that probably means that the stuff is clicking to where he might be striking out 170, 180 batters. And that is good enough to lead the staff. So I respect the question. I had to give it some thought. I also think there's just like enough ways where it could go wrong, or like kind of not wrong necessarily, but just where he kind of gets stuck in this middle ground of not being able to escape like the back of the rotation, whether it's because like he's still trying to wrestle with, does he have a breaking ball that's more efficient than his curveball in terms of like recording strikeouts, but also staying in games long enough to pile up innings and face more batters? Does he have another issue like the shoulder thing that popped up and stole some innings from him? Does he get into this cold stretch where he's frustrating Venable with not being able to go deep enough games, and so he is kind of swapped out and has to go in the bullpen and other guys take his starts? Like that's the reason why I think like Shane Smith feels like a better bet for that title. But should Burke click in a way to where like he spends the entire season in the rotation, he does seem like the favorite for that title.
I do like the idea that if you do slot Sean Burke as your number 5 starter to start the season, that you do have Burke and Smith on back-to-back days. I don't know, maybe it's too similar of stuff in velocity, but I do like the idea of having back-to-back starting pitchers who do have league average or better than league average fastball velocity following each other in the starting rotation. Leads us to over-under, which James, I'm not asking you about how likely is someone going to get fired or their employment status with this over-under for Sean Burke. But I'm feeling kind of, I don't know, positive, optimistic about Sean Burke. Like, I like these Pagoda projections. Like, if he can make 29 starts, and if he, in those 129 starts, lasts 145 innings, and I do think he's going to get that opportunity, unlike Anthony Kay and Erick Fedde, to be able to carry that type of workload. I mean, if he's striking out, you know, on average, at least one strikeout every inning, his K per 9 is 9, I think he can easily get to 145 strikeouts. So let's see. Do you agree with me, James, with my level of optimism from Sean Burke? Over under 140 and a half strikeouts for Sean Burke in 2026.
A successful season for him has him hit that. If he gets hurt, if he doesn't hold on to his rotation spots and start some time in AAA, like just last year, or if he gets moved off to like a bulk role or even like a short relief role where he shines, that all takes him out of that picture pretty easily. So I kind of feel like his season has to go kind of everything right to say that. So I'm tempted to say under. How many did he strike out last year?
133. In 134 innings.
I'll go over. I like Sean. I want good things to happen to him.
Love it. James is over. Jim, over under.
Gonna say under just because of what James was going to before his heart got in the way. No, I think if you look at it from like with the Pagoda projections, you get that blob graph that shows like the likely, I guess the most likely projections, or the bell curve, or sometimes it's more wobbly than that. But I could see a case where like the curve on his strikeouts like peaks around like 125, 130 because of all the ways he could miss time or be moved into another role. But I could see like the lead edge of that curve like extending into like 160, 170, 180 because of like the season where everything goes right and he's missing bats and throwing enough innings to where like that strikeout ability takes another huge leap. So I'm saying under more because of just the way circumstances can coalesce against him to just come up short of that number versus saying like he can't do it.
I'm going to take the over. Again, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about Sean Burke. I think he's going to surprise a lot of White Sox fans this year, keeping pace with Shane Smith as far as taking the ball every fifth day. I think Sean's got the ability to challenge 150 strikeouts. I don't know if he's a 200 strikeout type of pitcher, but I'm ready for him to surprise me. And I think that he'll surprise a lot of White Sox fans this upcoming season. And hopefully, just punch a hole through my wooden desk that I just didn't jinx him. And the next podcast that we do, we're talking about Sean Burke suffering from right elbow discomfort because I was feeling pretty positive about Mike Vasil coming into 2026. Hopefully that's not the case for Sean Burke. But let us know in the Sox Machine podcast comment section or on our YouTube channel if you're taking the over or under strikeouts for Sean Burke.
I am rooting for you guys in this over-under, not just because of the results, but also because like he has the widest disparity between what it looks like at his best and what it looks like when it's not working. And it's a lot of fun when he's throwing high heat and at the top of the zone, and then the hammer curve and missing bats, getting silly swings or swords. And yeah, I'd like to see more of that form. It's definitely more electrifying than like even Shane Smith at his best is more of a bully, somebody who just attacks, and the inning's over in 8 pitches versus somebody who just humiliates hitters the way that Burke can, the way that Hagen Smith can when he's locating his stuff. So I am rooting for that form.
And then wrapping up as far as this podcast, 2 additional questions. James, quickly, who makes their MLB debut first? Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, or Tanner McDougal?
I will say... I am going to say Schultz.
Okay.
I eliminate Smith based on his innings being built up slower. So the idea that he's like going to be up to full starts after when Schultz is. And Schultz just has, even though, he's not older than McDougal just hasn't gotten the AAA yet. Maybe there's more questions about Schultz is not without his own questions about like his changeup and how opposite-handed hitters, especially if things look like the way they did last year. But maybe just a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more like obviously more experience in AAA, although slight, a bit less to figure out for how the arsenal will look at the major league level, let's say, or just a bigger, longer history of throwing a starter level of strikes. I think if they're all lined up equally, especially like going off the recency bias of like their last start, I'd probably say like Hagen Smith is going to make the debut first. It's only him being tapered off that really puts him out of that conversation for me. And I think if it gets to June, I think that advantage probably is mostly gone, right? I certainly think it could go a number of directions. Like if Schultz looks like what he does here, obviously it wouldn't be good enough, and I'd put McDougal on an edge over him. Whereas if McDougal is, just holding 100 in every outing and looking great, or looking like he did down the stretch last year in Birmingham, like that looks like it could be ready really soon. So I think I could talk myself into any 3 outing answers, and if you don't cut me off, I'll probably back down and go to one of them pretty soon.
All right. So James is taking Noah Schultz. And the final question.
Oh, can I talk him to Tanner McDougal real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Besides like the innings, the edge he had in the rest, like I have the sense based on, your reporting about him, both like what he says, what coaches have said about him, what I've heard from him, about him at the minor leagues, like it feels if something goes, if there needs to be an audition earlier in the season, I think that they would feel comfortable throwing him in. And if it doesn't work out, feeling like they did no damage to him. Like if he gets a couple starts, gets roughed up by lefties, goes back down. I don't think they would have the fear that they damaged him in any way. I think like he's kind of pretty sound in terms of both his stuff and also like his ability to, based on the obstacles he overcame earlier in his professional career, that he seems like he could take a punch early on and recover pretty well.
Are you convinced, James? Do you want to change your answer from Noah Schultz to Tanner McDougal?
No, I mean, I talked to Giannis today, and he was talking about how both McDougal and Schultz are supposed to be pretty full go out the gate. I was a little like wondering what the question would be with Schultz, given that he only threw like in the 70 innings thing last year. So that makes me think it could be tapered a little bit for him as well. But I also just think like they have with Cannon, with Davitt, with some of their swingman, even with Vasil out for, who knows what it's going to be. I think there's a layer of starter depth where they can kind of hold off putting any of these guys for need until like it's kind of just banging down the door and we want to let this guy run. So if that angle, like if that's really what the measure is going to be, is who looks like the best and readiest, then I'll pivot away entirely and just go back to Hagen Smith.
Well, the last
like, when they are adopting a dog and they're supposed to choose between the 2 owners, and just gets confused and runs like towards some third party. That's where I'm at right now.
All right. Well, I thought it was a fun question to pose, and who will be making their MLB debut first out of those three? Final question. So, Jim, we did the name every White Sox player that played for the 2005 team, and we did it. 18 different pitchers last year made a start for the Chicago White Sox. So over under 17 and a half pitchers making a start for the 2026 Chicago White Sox.
Gonna say over, just because when you look at the starters that they used last year, like designated intended starting pitchers, he basically had 8 or 9. So he had Smith, Martin, Burke, Cannon, Savali, Hauser, Perez, Gomez, and then Bryce Wilson. I think, probably they didn't see him being in the rotation long term, but like they started him like he was supposed to throw 5 innings. I think he maybe include Mike Vasil, but I think he was more like spot starter, swingman, see how long you can go versus we're hoping for 5. Like 5 is a success story here. So I think, based on that, I think the White Sox can outdo their number of intended starters because like they could kind of do like a hockey shift of new starters based on how guys are throwing or whether guys are hurt or whether guys need a breather, whether like their veteran plugins right now don't work out. Like I think you can get to 11 or 12 guys who are expected to throw 5 innings when they take the ball. And then at that point, you get to opener weirdness and how they look to buy a day, and they have a number of swingmen too, can easily fill that role. So I think they could approach 20.
Oh man, that's a lot to remember.
But hopefully like in the good way, where it's just like, oh, we have a lot of depth, and Will Venable is open to creatively solving the problem on a given day versus, oh my God, just somebody help us cross this day off the calendar.
Yeah, hopefully it's not the latter there. Not that type of situation. But that's a lot of pitchers we're going to have to remember at the end of the season when we try to name every single White Sox player that played for the 2026 squad. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also check out our videos at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sox Machine, where you also have our previous preview episodes via video of key players that you can check out on YouTube. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the social media platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at SoxMachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. You get a discount on an annual subscription. We also have additional perks as well, as our 10 WAR, 25 WAR, and our veteran committee members get to participate in the Sox Machine Fantasy Baseball Leagues. And our 25 WAR folks, we just had a Zoom call with them, so they get to jump in a monthly Zoom call with us and ask whatever's on their mind in regards to the Chicago White Sox and Sox Machine. So again, if you enjoy our work and you want more, you can get more by going to SoxMachine.com/products and sign up today. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.